Welcome along to another episode of the Play On Podcast, your weekly instalments of all things Scottish football and beyond. I'm David Simmons, and as always, I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Commons and Anthony Brown. On this week's show, we are catching up with the aftermath of the Scottish Cup, and we want you to get involved as well with your opinions on how that game went. We're going to be discussing that in full. So we want to hear from you. We're fully interactive. Get your comments up on the chat, and we can discuss them. Don't forget, if you're watching via YouTube, please subscribe to the State of Mind media page, and it's fully interactive. Do get involved with any discussions we are having. Wherever you're watching the feed tonight, obviously give it a share, so you, your friends and family can all join in with the show. I'm David Simmons. You might notice we're doing things slightly different tonight. We're in the comfort of our own homes, so it's a bit of a different take on the show, but it could be our last one of the year. Things are changing into 2021, and it looks like we could be doing this more often, guys. Stephen, Anthony, thanks for joining us. What was your take on the game yesterday, Stephen?
I've only just about started stopping crying now, David. So it wasn't a great day to be a Hearts fan. If you look at the game, obviously as a kind of overall, you have to be happy with the performance and kind of the levels of where Hearts got to in the end. Kind of if you consider where they were at half time, but I mean, I don't know if I've got any right to have this mentality as a Hearts fan, but I like to think that as a Hearts fan, you're kind of supposed to have a winning mentality, and it doesn't matter how well you played, it doesn't matter how hard you pushed Celtic or any team. If you come away and you lose the Scottish Cup final, I don't see any reason to be anything other than completely dejected. But no, listen, congratulations to Celtic. It's a massive achievement what they've managed to do over the last 4 years. A lot of people have said, we'll probably never see this again. We'll probably never see it again in our lifetime. So yeah, congratulations to them. But
that's it, Stephen. Yeah, I mean, they completed the historical quadruple treble in the dramatic penalty shootout win over Hearts yesterday in the Scottish Cup to win their Scottish Cup for the 40th time. Anthony, for a neutral, that was a great game of football to watch. For a neutral, Stevens gave us the perspective of a Hearts fan, but watching it as a neutral, I mean, what a cup final that was. It's a shame the fans weren't there to enjoy it, isn't it?
Yeah, it was incredible. I've seen it compared to the 1991 game between Motherwell and Dundee United, and for me, the best cup final of my lifetime was that one. And obviously, the Hibs Rangers game in 2016 was an absolute belter as well. That had loads of drama, but I think yesterday's was right up there with it. That's certainly in the top three in my lifetime in terms of yesterday's, the 2016 and the 1991 one. I mean, I always expected Hearts to give Celtic a game yesterday, but not necessarily in that manner. I think when it went 2-0 Celtic at half-time, the way the first half went, I think most people thought Hearts were dead and buried because Celtic seemed to be playing with a freedom, a confidence, and Hearts looked... The way Hearts set up, they needed to feel their way into the game, keep it 0-0 for a long period of time, and then hope that Celtic started to get frustrated. But that game plan obviously went out the window pretty early when Christie scored from a brilliant strike from 20-odd yards. And from then on, Hearts looked like they were just treading water at best. They were trying to hang in the game, but they were offering very little going forward. And I don't think anybody envisaged them coming back as strongly as they did in the second half. I think the amazing thing about the fight back is they didn't actually change tactics. They stayed with the same formation. Robbie Nielsen said, we didn't change anything. We just told them to be a bit more aggressive. And you could see they did play with a bit more aggression, a bit more adventure, even though they were still set up in that. I thought it was quite an awkward-looking 5-3-2 formation. I didn't think that necessarily did them any favours. I can understand why they started that way, even though I wouldn't necessarily have gone that way myself. But I never felt it was the best way for Hearts to play. But obviously, as I said, they didn't even have to change formation to get a grip of the game. So Robbie Nielsen was vindicated in that regard. And once they felt their way into the game, they looked like the likeliest winners. And I remember saying when Scotland were playing Serbia, it felt throughout extra time that Scotland were just waiting to get beat by Serbia. And that didn't happen, obviously. They won the penalties. Yesterday, it genuinely felt like Celtic were just waiting to get beat. It felt like Hearts just had to deliver the knockout blow. And obviously, they had so many opportunities. They had the Ginelli chances at the end of the 90. In extra time, you just felt if someone was going to nick it, it was going to be Hearts. And then obviously in the penalty shootout, Hearts got the advantage when Gordon saved from Christie. And at that point, you're thinking, the Cup's won. Celtic are done. And then as much as Celtic almost blew it, they did show remarkable resolve to pull it back from the brink at the end. So yeah, it was a terrific topsy-turvy final. Both teams showed incredible spirit. They both displayed their weaknesses. They both displayed their strengths. It was just a brilliant final between two of Scotland's biggest clubs. It was a fantastic spectacle.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do keep your comments coming, although we can't actually put them on the screen tonight due to us working remotely, if you like. But hi to Stephen Kelly. He's been in touch. Davey M as well. Thanks for your comment. And Ian McIntosh. Well done, Celtic. Not the performance we were hoping for, but some achievement nonetheless. It was some hit by Christie, agreeing with your comment that you just made there. After completing this quadruple treble yesterday, is that put Neil Lennon in the safe zone now then, Stephen?
I think it's maybe bought him a little bit more time. I wouldn't say safe. I don't think a lot of things have massively changed from the situation being a couple of weeks ago. And I know that maybe sounds ridiculous because he's added a major trophy in this country. But I think the situation and the problems that the Celtic fans have identified within their club are not going to just be solved by a pretty mediocre performance against Hearts in a Scottish Cup final. Going back to what Anthony said about obviously the performances of the two teams, like I completely agree with what he said in terms of the way that Hearts set up. It was a bit of a strange, but I think the tactics were right. But I think the players, whether that be through instructions from Nielsen and the coaching staff or from themselves, just showed too much respect to Celtic in the first half. Like it just goes to show that you put these guys under a bit of pressure, that their mentality is not good at the moment. They're not the Celtic of old who would have just batted you off. If you tried to be aggressive, they'll just pass around you and go and find another way. This is a team that if you get at them, they don't really know how to cope with that. They don't really have that strong mentality. And again, I think that harks back to the management. So winning that game yesterday, although it will have bought them a bit more time, and obviously there'll be a lot more people who will maybe take the foot off the gas in terms of the way that they were treating Neil Lennon. I don't think it'll help all the problems completely. I think if Celtic were to go and drop more points in the league again in the next couple of weeks, you would just see this exact same scenes as we've seen from previous weeks. Yeah,
now there were some changes made by Neil Lennon. He brought Brown and Christie back into the starting 11. He also started with Hazard, the 22-year-old goalkeeper, in the sticks, Anthony. Were you impressed with him? Because he did start a little bit hesitant. Is that just with experience, do you think?
I think most people expected that he might have been whoever started in goals for Celtic might have been a weak link, whether it was Bain, Barkas or Hazard. With Hazard, it was more just the fact he's young, relatively untested at this level. There was always a fear that the occasion might be too big for him, and he certainly did look a bit jittery whenever he was tested during the match. I mean, that goes back to right at the start when Naismith got that chance when he got through and prodded it just wide of the goal. There's a bit of, I don't know if it was indecision or whatever, but it was probably a bad decision from the goalkeeper. He came and stopped. He didn't look like he knew exactly what he was doing in that moment. There was a couple of other moments where he came for crosses, didn't look convincing. He got a bit of stick for, was it Kingsley's goal or one of Hart's goals? But then when you see it back, he did look to be fouled by Naismith. It looked a pretty blatant foul in the lead up to one of them. So I would give him the benefit of the doubt on that one, certainly. But he didn't look too clever at Ginnelly's goal either. And then when it comes to the penalty shootouts, you're thinking Craig Gordon v Hazard. Surely Hearts have got a massive advantage here, and football just surprises you in so many ways. And it turned out Hazard was the guy that saved 2 penalties and Gordon only saved 1. It just incredible. And fair play to the boy. They were both really, I thought Kingsley's penalty was pretty poor. Whiting's wasn't great either, but they were both good saves from a goalkeeping perspective, and he ended up the hero. So fair play to him for he sort of made amends for any mistakes he made during the match.
Yeah,
so you're the goalie coach at LIS here. So why do you not critique his performance? What did you think about him?
I thought he looked nervous to start with, I'll be honest. I thought he looked a bit nervous. He put that down, obviously, to lack of experience. I think he's only started 3 games. So you give him the benefit of the doubt. He's obviously been impressing in the other games, why Neil Lennon's picked him. When it comes to penalties, it's an absolute lottery. I mean, Craig Gordon, when Christie stepped up, I'm saying to myself, he's going to go high. Christie, every penalty he does, he goes high. And Gordon predicted that because Gordon didn't go down at a mid-height or down low. He stood up and he went like a 3/4 height and saved it. And there was a great save by Gordon. So that shows experience in him. to be fair, they were a good type. The ones that penalties is a complete lottery, and as a goalkeeper, you should never save a penalty. A free hit from 12 yards out, no attacker, no outfield player should ever miss a penalty, in my opinion. The guy, young Hazard, he did look nervous. It's a Scottish Cup final. Anybody at that age with that background and playing for Celtic, we're only starting 3 games, I believe it is, it's going to be nervous. You've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. But he come through it, and at the end of the day, he's got a winner's medal in his cabinet.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
Absolutely.
A couple of instances I want to touch on in the cup final. Obviously, there was Berra's handball, Stephen. I mean, it's the rules say it's a handball. It's a penalty. He's not even facing the ball. His hands up. No. Is it because he's trying to gain leverage in the air? Is he getting himself steady on the way back down? What's your take on that?
For me, I've been a guy that's watched Christophe Berra, and I don't know if Anthony will agree with us. I doubt he will, but it seems to me that he's got, and it works a lot of the time, but he's learned his trade from Stephen Presley, right? So Stephen Presley is famous for being a great defender, strong, hard to tackle. But any Hearts fan or Celtic fan probably that's watched Stephen Presley over a long period of time is the best part of his game is he gets a wee touch, he flies through the air and gets a free kick in a great area for Hearts defensively. And I think that's what Berra was trying to do. Like, see, if you watch, Berra gets caught under the ball, goes up for the header, and then flails his arms around as if he's been pushed. Like, and if he hadn't done that flail of the arms, because he's not trying to give himself leverage, because he's already jumped, he's on his way back down when his arms go back up. I think he's trying to almost think, oh no, I'm caught under the ball here, I'm going to see if I can try and make it look like I've been fouled and get the free kick. And as you say, I mean, it's very unfortunate. He's not facing the ball. It's not a decision that he's made to put his hand in the way of the ball. But when your hands go up in that position, in the box, you're always running the risk. And I felt bad for him, because obviously he was kind of at fault for one of the goals in the previous final when we played Celtic. And then he'd obviously had a bit of a hard time with Hearts and been out the team and back in, and he's now been kind of recently back in the team. And I felt bad for him, because I thought today's going to be a day that either makes or breaks you. But I mean, give him his due. In the second half, he came out and he was heroic as much as anybody else. So, but yeah, I just think it was a bit of for a guy of his experience, it was a bit of a kind of weird decision, but not something that he could have really helped, to be honest.
I don't know if he meant it. I mean, that's the first time I've heard that theory, that he was trying to win a free kick. So if that was the case, then fair enough. It's the way I see it is like the way that he's put both hands up at the same time. It just looks like someone who has been pushed in the back. That's the first reaction that they would do. So I don't know. Again, it's my theory. I've been trying to think about anything. When you jump, I've never played centre half. I'm not used to jumping for a header. I don't know what your natural body movement is, but I can imagine your arms certainly don't stay by your side. I know people are saying his arms went up, then came down, then went back up again.
Yeah.
But I mean, if he's off balance, he's landed slightly awkwardly, his arm could be anywhere, and he had no idea where the ball was. So I mean, he certainly didn't mean to hit the ball. It's a penalty in this day and age because it's hit his hand. There's no arguments about that. But I just think if you're going to criticise him for anything, I would think I'd need to watch it again, because even then there's no guarantees he should have won the header. But that would be the one thing that I would think he would be disappointed in, that he didn't win the header, because that's generally a thing he's good at, winning these aerial duels. So he'll probably be disappointed in that regard, more so than the ball actually hitting his hand. Because
that's what I'm saying, Tony. It all comes from him getting caught under the ball almost, because as you say, for years and years he's been, as far as I'm concerned, he's been probably the best headerer of the ball in the Premier League. Like he's so good in the air, he's so strong, he times his headers really well, and I just think he had got caught under the ball slightly at that incident. And I don't know. I might be, as I say, I might be completely wrong, but it looks to me like he's threw his hands up looking for a foul, and it's hit him in the arm.
It's an interesting theory, because it did look weird that his hands went up again when he clearly wasn't trying to play the ball with it. So I mean, you're thinking, why is his hand gone up? But it could be a total accident, or it could be what you're suggesting, that he was sort of trying to go down for a free kick or whatever.
Yeah. Hi to Karaoke, who's been in touch. Celtic fan, our defence is a shambles, amateur at best, not looking forward to the game at Ibrox at all. The team just looks like they've not got a plan B. I kind of agree with that. It did look a bit shaky at the back. Hi to Ian McIntosh again, who's been in touch. He touched on Berra being gutted. He thinks Gordon looked absolutely devastated at the end of the game there, and I agree with that. He did. Him and Craig Halkett, you could see how much it meant to the Hearts players, especially the effort they put in.
For Gordon as well, like Gordon's an ex-Celtic player, and for kind of the situation that happened with him during the summer, and I don't think Craig Gordon's that kind of person. I don't think he's bitter and twisted and sits up every night thinking about stuff like that. But it must add a little bit of spice to the situation where you're going into a cup final. And again, you follow the narrative of Craig Gordon's career. This is a guy who is potentially finished out the game completely, and for him to then kind of come back to his boyhood club and have a chance, even just a chance at getting to the Scottish to winning a Scottish Cup, and to get all the way to penalties and then lose, it's heartbreaking. And of course, and you can't really dress it up any other way than that. And of course, these guys are going to be upset. But it was actually, in a horrible way, it was quite nice from my point of view as a Hearts fan to see the players that invested in it, because one of the big kind of the question marks from a fan's point of view that a lot of the people have kind of levied at some of the players, and that under Craig Levein in the last few years, the performances have been that bad that a lot of the people were saying, well, do these players even care? Are they even bothered? Are they just here as martyrs and picking up a wage? And I think if you look at that yesterday, and again, I'm not saying that applies to all the players, but you look at that yesterday and you saw how much it meant to these guys. So, listen, from a Hearts point of view, you just need to look at that, draw a line under it and say, right, let's concentrate on the most important thing this season, is getting back to the Premier League. If we can put in that sort of a performance against a reasonably strong Celtic side, there's absolutely no reason that we shouldn't be doing that every single week against Queen of the South and Morton, and you know what I mean? So it's, from a Hearts point of view, I think you just need to try and take the positives from it, pick the best parts out of the wreckage and move on.
Yeah, Anthony.
The thing that's so hard for Hearts to take from that yesterday is, in last year's final, I actually thought played better overall in terms of the full 90 minutes. They got a performance from the outset and they were good from the start. And probably they took the lead, obviously, and were the better team for the first hour. But then Celtic sort of came on strong in the last maybe 15, 20 minutes, and they had the momentum at the end. So by the time the end of the game had finished, you had almost accepted that Celtic had turned the game round, and Celtic were not necessarily deserved winners, but it wasn't quite as agonising for Hearts because they hadn't chucked it away almost, because there had been that period at the end of the game where Celtic had been on top. Whereas yesterday, it felt, for me, as soon as Hearts got back to 2-2, I just thought there's only one winner here. And the fact that it didn't materialise that way from Hearts, I think Hearts got to 2-2 in the 67th minute, so then there was another 20 minutes of normal time plus a half hour of extra time. Apart from that period where Celtic were leading. But even when Celtic were leading, I never thought the game was beyond Hearts. I still felt they had another goal in them. And then I think performance-wise, definitely. But I just thought because of the energy that they'd expended, I think Celtic were a bit more sort of streetwise in extra time. They were kind of using the ball in good areas, and Hearts were having to do the sort of hard yards in the running. But I just think as well, I know this might be really naive, but see when you get to the 100 and half time and extra time, Scott Brown obviously headers the ball, Griffiths bangs it in, pretty much blows the whistle straight after that. If you're Neil Lennon and the coaching staff, you must be absolutely tearing your hair. You've got 15 minutes to win a Scottish Cup final, and you still can't hold a lead even in that period. And it's not like Hearts were throwing the kitchen sink and chucking defenders up and Hearts were still disciplined. They were still in a shape. They were still trying to play the way that they had played throughout that second half. And obviously, from a Celtic point of view, I would say that's massively worrying. Again, a team as dominant as Celtic have been, and arguably should be seeing that game out. And it's the same argument that the Celtic fans had when they played Aberdeen. They went up, they had a bad first half in that game. They kind of changed the balance of the game, went up 3-2, and then last minute they give away a penalty. And it's just something that you're seeing time and time again. And I don't know whether that comes from the manager or whether that's the discipline within the team. But for me, if I was a Celtic fan, that would be something that would really worry me. Yeah,
so there's a couple of points that I want to talk about the cup final before we move on to any other games. Edouard's cheeky chip of a penalty, Anthony. Is it a case of just score a penalty anyway, or do you think that was a bit out of order, or do you have any opinion on that penalty take at all?
I can see both sides of it. I can see why Gordon booted or threw the ball at him. I would probably have done the same myself.
Did he get booked for that? Sorry to butt in. Did he get booked for that?
He did.
No, he never. Did he?
He did. Yeah.
I think he did. I'm sure at half time.
He did. Half time.
Oh, right. I never knew that.
I can see why Gordon did that. I would have been the same if somebody did that to me, but equally, I have no problem with it whatsoever. I don't think it's... I mean, at the end of the day, Edouard risked his own reputation by doing it. If Gordon stands up and catches it, Edouard looks absolutely ridiculous. So, I mean, if he wants to, I never slaughtered Jason Cummings for doing it. Cummings popped it over the bar and he ended up looking stupid. But equally, if Cummings pops it into the net, the Dundee United goalkeeper ends up looking stupid. I don't really have too much of an issue with that, to be honest. I mean, people get riled by things in football. Stuff like that doesn't bother me.
Fraser Ogilvy's commented on our show tonight. He's asked what our thoughts are on the penalty kick, because Neil Lennon come out, I think it was on Scott Sport last night, Sports Scene, and said it was disgraceful. He didn't agree with it. I think Gary Caldwell was the other guest on the show, and he was kind of saying, well, it's a case of you just score by any means, like what I said. But
absolutely, like that's my opinion of it. Like, I don't buy into this. You've got to show respect. Like, why should you show respect? Like, you score by any means possible. Like, if he goes through 1-on-1 with Craig Gordon, gives him the eyes and knocks it through his legs, is he going to apologise to him for that as well? Like, I don't agree with that at all. Like, Neil Lennon coming out and saying it was a disgrace. Like, the guy's just put you 2-0 up in a cup final. Like, it's not like he's chipped the ball down and then spat in Craig Gordon's face. Like, I just think there's massively too much made of it, and I understand that it's maybe kind of like a mentality of they used to be teammates, so they've probably got like a personal relationship. But so what? Like, if I'm playing against you, Simi, and I chip the ball down the middle, I'm not disrespecting you, but I'm going to laugh about it and enjoy it. Like, it's just, I think there's been too much made of it, to be honest.
Yeah, playing devil's advocate, is that maybe Edward putting himself in the window saying, look at how cool, calm and collected a player I am. I do this in cup finals. Is that?
Well, he probably should have taken advantage of the 2 sitters that he had in the main game as well. But I don't know. Edward's another one that every time I watch him, he's got these moments of magic in him, and he's obviously got ability, and I think kind of similar to a lot of players. He's got this sort of languid style where he's a bit laid back and he's not constantly bombing around. He's just picking up clever little positions. But if you're not showing it, like if you've got that languid style, you need, when the ball does come to you, you need to produce. If you're not actually doing the hard yards and closing down fullbacks and doing all the hard things that strikers need to do, then you need to be able to produce when the moments are on. And fair enough, he produced with a penalty, but other than that, like, this is a guy that Celtic were claiming was worth like 20-30 million at one point. But not for me, sorry.
No, I mean, a couple of other things I want to touch on as well is, I think we spoke about this after the Hearts semi-final, is the referees behind the goals. I mean, what's the point? What's the point? That the instant you talked about, Anthony, where Hazard was possibly fouled, he had a chance to flag up a foul for that. The ball then goes behind the line, which eventually the referee signalled by his watch. But it was also a handball, and not once did the referee, the 5th official, if you like to call him, behind the goals, give a wee wave of his little stick or make any sort of sign towards the referee to say something's happened here, whether it be a foul on the goalkeeper, whether the ball crossed the line, or whether it be a handball by Christie. What was the point?
Handball by what, in the lead up to Kingsley's goal?
Yeah, Kingsley's goal. I mean, Christie kind of handballs it when the ball's
he doesn't kind of handball it. He punches it off the line. Like it's
the 5th official just does nothing. He doesn't.
Oh, when it crossed the line and right, I got you. I mean,
they always seem to be implemented during semi-finals, cup finals, whatever it is. They don't happen obviously in your normal Premier League game. So what's the point in having them in the cup finals?
Oh, I see what you mean.
I've always said, like, you don't know what they're contributing to the game because you're not listening to the feed. They could be given information that's really important to the referees and to the linesmen or whatever. So they could be an imperative part of the game. But you're quite right in what you're saying, Sammy, that when it comes to big moments in games, as we talked about at the Hearts Hibs game, as you quite rightly stated, that he obviously didn't give anything at that point. So he didn't give a foul on the keeper. He didn't give a handball, because the referee was happy for the game to go on until his watch bleeped. That was the only time that he stopped the game. So he wasn't even considering stopping the game prior to that. So that, to me, says that the 5th official has done nothing. It's almost like they're putting these guys out there just as a sort of, we don't need to spend any money on VAR, guys. We've got these 5th officials, and let's the less said about them, the better.
That was basically the point I was trying to prove there, Stephen. Yeah, no, you've answered that well. Anthony, Hearts, they obviously paid massive respect to Marius Saliukis yesterday by wearing shorts with 26 on it. That was a nice touch, mate, wasn't
it? Yeah. I mean, there was a lot made of, obviously, the effort to try and pay tribute to Marius in the build-up to yesterday's game. And I mean, Zalewskis was part of a fantastic win over Celtic at Hampden in the previous game in 2012. I was looking back at that, and he was one of Hearts' best players that day. So it was quite fitting, I think, that there was a spirited Hearts performance against Celtic. I mean, at one stage it did look like it was going to be a pretty grisly afternoon for Hearts at half-time, but I think the way they roared back, they certainly... I don't like to talk about it in terms of doing somebody proud when they're no longer here, but it certainly was a performance that I'm sure he would have been happy to have been a part of it. And to be honest, slightly deviating, I must single out Craig Halkett. I thought he was excellent. We're talking about centre-halves with Zalewskis, and we've spoken about Christoph Berra before. I thought Halkett was excellent for Hearts yesterday, particularly from half-time onwards. He was probably Hearts' best player for me in terms of the way he won pretty much everything in the air. He was making interceptions. I've not been overly convinced by him since he's signed from Livingston. I don't think he's quite done he's obviously chipped in with his fair share of goals, but defensively, I don't think he's been good enough over the piece since he came to Hearts. He's not the quickest defender. I wouldn't hold that against him because you can only run as fast as you can run. I don't think you can improve your pace that much, but certainly I don't think he's been as solid as and solid and consistent as he was at Livingston. But I think yesterday we saw a real mature centre-half performance yesterday from Halkett, and fair play to him because he's had a rough time since he came to Hearts. He had a promising start when he was scoring lots of goals, but ultimately he was signed to keep the ball out in it, and he didn't do that often enough last year. He was hindered by injuries, but he seems to be establishing himself as Hearts' main centre-half this year, and he looks like he's growing into it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And like I said earlier, you could see exactly what it meant to him yesterday. I mean, there's pictures in the papers today. His eyes bloodshot red and tears. It obviously meant quite a bit to him yesterday. One thing that was good as well, our last probable point on the cup final, was the rivalry between the two. There was a real sense of aggression between the likes of Naismith. There was Halliday, Scott Brown. And thanks to someone who's put a message up here, I won't repeat your name. What was the point in Scott Brown shouting in the faces of the Hearts players after the third goal? And I believe there was an altercation at full time as well. But that's part of the rivalry, part of the tension and the adrenaline of the Scottish Cup, is it not, Stephen?
Yeah, absolutely. As a rival fan from another team, I don't like Scott Brown, but I admire him massively as a football player, and what he's achieved as a captain. You just can't deny. I mean, the way he goes about his business isn't everybody's cup of tea, but he's one of these guys that if he played for your team, you'd absolutely adore him. You'd applaud him off the park every single day. I think the thing with Naismith was because I think they two are very similar. They're what a lot of football fans would class as scummy players. Like, in terms of, again, Naismith's a guy that if he plays for your team, you love him. If he doesn't, you hate him. Because he's obnoxious, he's in your face. And I think the Brown and him had obviously that wee sort of tete-a-tete all the way through the game, and I think it came from his I'm not going to say deliberate stamp on Brown in the sort of the start of the second half, but I just think he maybe left his foot in where it didn't belong, and Scott Brown maybe took a little bit of exception to that. Also, I think that when Naismith took the first penalty for Hearts, when he scored the penalty, he was giving it to Connor Hazard. He was absolutely giving him it, but just obviously trying to get any advantage he could, thinking this is a young lad. And when Griffiths scored his penalty, which is the first one for Celtic, you could see him pointing at Naismith, giving it exactly. But now, listen, that's part of the game. That's what you want to see. Like, I'm all for that, rather than what you saw in England a couple of weeks ago when you had the Man United and the Man City players hugging and walking off the pitch arm in arm at the end of the game. That's just, for me, there's a place in football for people to be friends and like outwit and be friendly. But see, when you're on that park, you want to win, they want to win. It's a rivalry. That's what sport and that's what football should be. Like, it shouldn't spill over into hatred, but there should be a very strong will to win on both sides, and I think that's what you saw yesterday.
I agree, actually. I think, I see Hearts fans going off their nut about Scott Brown yesterday, but let's be honest, Naismith was just as bad as Brown for a long period of that game. If Naismith had scored a goal in normal time, he'd have been up in Scott Brown's face. There's no argument about that, I don't think. I mean, I would never do that myself. That's not the way I would play it, but Scott Brown is what Scott Brown is, as Stephen Naismith said, and Stephen Naismith is what Stephen Naismith is. And these two guys, like them or not, as you just said, they're the sort of guys, they're wind-up merchants. We've seen Stephen Naismith 100 times laughing at opposition players when they're getting beat. Everybody remembers the one where he's laughing at Darren O'Day when Hearts got 3-0 up on Dundee. So this is not exclusive to Scott Brown. Any Hearts fans knocking Scott Brown for being a bad winner need to remember that their own captain is equally mischievous, if you like, or whatever. I mean, there's an argument that Scott Brown should have more class, but I think we've known for long enough that Scott Brown likes to wind people up. At the end of the day, he's not doing anything malicious. He's been a wee bit naughty. He's not doing anything sinister. 99% of players probably wouldn't do it, but equally 99% of players probably wouldn't do what Stephen Naismith does. But equally, away from the pitch, they're both decent guys. They're both good guys. They just want to win. You see it with Brown and Naismith. They're mucking about round about goalkeepers at corners. They're playing cat and mouse round about the goalkeepers. It's like just a game. It's nonsense. It's just a bit of competitive. I mean, to be honest, I think the one with Naismith and with Scott Brown and Uche Ikpeazu last year left a slightly worse taste, because I think it was a bit harsh. I don't think Ikpeazu actually did anything to merit what Scott Brown was doing to him at the end of that game. Whereas yesterday, I think it was just Brown had been taking so much off the likes of Halliday and Naismith throughout the game. He's obviously just wanted to give a bit back when his team's won. So, I mean, it's fun in games. Let's not get too het up about stuff like that. I wouldn't do it myself, but I'm not going to get too het up about a player doing it. You've got to keep it in perspective. It's not the worst thing that we've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's very little rest for Lennon's history makers, if you like. They face bottom side Ross County and Premiership duty on Wednesday at 6 o'clock kickoff. While Hearts, they move on to Saturday. They lick their wounds. They go against Championship side Ayr United at Tynecastle with a 3 o'clock kickoff. As I said, Celtic, they host Ross County. They've just applied Yogi Hughes as our new manager. Do you think that's a good appointment, Stephen?
Well, do you think it's a good appointment, David? You're basically the guy that got him the job.
For anyone that's watched it doesn't know, I do another show. It's the Salt and Sauce Chat Show, and Yogi Hughes was our guest on Friday night. He was basically putting himself in the shop window, saying that he was ready to get back into football and he was looking for a club. Now, I can't take sole responsibility for it, Stephen.
Listen to me. There's two ways of looking at it. You can look at it one way, you got him the job. The other way is he did that show with you and thought, my career can't get any lower than this. I'm taking the Ross County job.
Or they already knew he was getting the job and just never told me. So I think that's a great club for him, mate, though, isn't it? That's a great club for everybody.
Absolutely. The fact is, like, he did so well up in Inverness before, so he knows the area. Like, because I've said this before, a big problem for the likes of Ross County and Inverness is recruiting players, because they're so kind of distanced from everything. They're so far away from everywhere that if they're trying to bring players from down south and things like that, that they're trying to say to them, like, if you're saying come and live in Edinburgh, come and live in Glasgow, that's fine, because they're quite easy to get back down south and see their families and stuff. And it's the same with management. If you're trying to recruit a manager, it must be really difficult to try and find a guy who's prepared to kind of uplift his whole family and his network and move to Inverness. But you've got John Hughes, who's already got roots in that area. He is, I cannot believe he's been out of work for as long as he is, because he is a guy who has been pretty much, apart from Wraith Rovers, which was obviously a bit of a, it's just one of those freak appointments that it just didn't work out for him. But everywhere else, he's been an absolute massive success. If you ever listen to any player that's worked under him or like had a training session with him, like, they speak so highly of how he motivates players, how his training, his ethos and how he plays. And I just think it's a massive boost for the Scottish Premier League to have a guy like that back in a job, because he's just one of the good guys in football as well. Like, I don't think you'll ever hear anyone speak badly about him. I think he's just an all-round good guy and a very good football manager. I think Ross County have massively upgraded. So you'll hopefully see, you'll potentially see them move up the league in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to see Yogi back in football. Anthony, do you think the Cali Thistle fans will be a wee bit downhearted that he's taken a job to their rivals, or will they still remember him as being the hero that won on the Scottish Cup?
I mean, I wouldn't profess to know the absolute ins and outs of that rivalry, but certainly a lot of players seem to cross the divide and play for both teams. I mean, I'm thinking off the top of my head, Tansy, there's loads of them. I don't want to say names in case.
Cole Donaldson did it in the summer. Cole Donaldson moved from Inverness to Ross County in the summer.
Yeah, I mean,
you're right.
Dozens of players that played for both those teams, and I don't think it kills their reputation. I mean, I think there's a few of the cup-winning team have actually gone from Inverness to Ross County, if I remember rightly, or the other way around.
This is the thing. Again, it goes back to living up there. If you settle there and you're playing for Inverness in the Championship, you do reasonably well, and Ross County come calling, it's an absolute no-brainer. You don't move house. All you do is just move to a club in a higher league and probably get more money. So
Don Cowie was one as well. He played for both teams earlier in his career. He's gone back to Ross County. So I don't think it's I dare say there's some rabid Inverness fans who won't like it, but I don't think it's going to kill his legacy as a cup-winning Inverness manager. I don't think anything he could do. Billy Brown went to Hibs after being assistant manager at Hearts, and he's still seen as a legend by most Hearts supporters. So I don't think it will do any harm in that regard. But yeah, it's certainly some people just seem to they enjoy the Highlands. They seem to be drawn up there. They go to one club, they come away, and then they go back to another club. So, John Hughes knows all the difficulties that Stephen's outlined there about being up in the Highlands. He knows what's required to get players up there and what the hurdles you've got to overcome are. So I think it looks a pretty good fit. He knows the league, obviously, which is half the battle up here. I think as much as we like to think that we want fresh blood to come in from outside, I think to prosper in the Scottish Premiership, most people that do prosper have a previous knowledge of the league. So that will certainly bode well for Ross County. And I think they were in a position where they needed a fresh face to come in and galvanise them. And Yogi, he's not everybody's cup of tea. I think he sort of comes across as an old school sort of guy because of the way he speaks and what have you, but he's a very thoughtful guy when it comes to football. His last job at Raith Rovers was a bit of a disaster. I think he lost sections of the dressing room there, but before that, he's generally had a good career, and he'll be itching to go again. And you spoke to him on Friday night there. He's an enthusiastic guy. He's generally quite a likeable guy, I think. I don't know him particularly well, but any dealings I've had with him, he's always come across a really good guy, and I think he's the sort of guy that will just inject a wee bit of spark into the dressing room if they are a little bit beleaguered up there.
Yeah, no, I'm sure I speak on behalf of all us. I wish Yogi all the best up at Ross County. There was another game taking place yesterday as well at Rugby Park. I don't know if I agree with that, another game being played on Scottish Cup Day. Do any have an opinion on that, or is it just...
This is no ordinary year. You've just got to fit the games in when you can.
So was it Rugby Park?
We've just had a cup final where Andy Halliday, as we spoke about before, got knocked out by Rangers and then played in the final for Hearts. Craig Gordon probably got a winners and a losers medal yesterday. So it's not the same as a normal year, is it?
Nah, fair enough. So it finished Kilmarnock 0, Aberdeen 2. Aberdeen are now on level points with Celtic, all being that Celtic have got 2 games in hand. Is there any chance you think Aberdeen or maybe even Hibs could go on and push Celtic for possibly second place, guys?
I don't see it, to be honest. It would take a massive implosion for Celtic. I can only really see Celtic improving from where they've been over the last month or so. The improvement signs are already there. It's not a massive back to where they were last season, say, but that's not going to happen overnight. If your team have slipped and sort of whatever the reasons are for the kind of slump in form that they've had, it's that you're not just going to change that by clicking your fingers. It's not just going to happen. But I don't see Celtic getting to a situation where they're going to lose another 5, 6, 7 games, which they would have to do between now and the end of the season for Hibs or Aberdeen to have any chance of kind of catching them. I only see Celtic potentially closing the gap on Rangers, not going the other way.
I agree. I think Celtic are going to get a wee lift. I think they already got a lift from winning the previous 2 games. I think as much as they were all over the place at times in the second half yesterday, I think they'll get a real lift from just eking that victory out. I think the boost of winning the trophy will be big for them. And I think also the fact that Rangers have showed they are beatable when they lost at St Mirren, I think that will give Celtic a lift. I think that's a massive thing. I think if Rangers had just kept motoring, Celtic might have got a bit disheartened. But the fact that Rangers can lose to a club like St Mirren, I think it's given Celtic a glimmer of hope that the title isn't necessarily... I think it's over. But I think there's probably Celtic fans and Celtic players out there that now think if we can just apply a little bit of pressure, get a bit of consistency, let's go to Ibrox and win on the 2nd of January, see how Rangers can handle it. I think there will be an element of that, but I mean, I don't think Celtic are going to win the league, but I think they're going to get the bit between their teeth and get a little bit of consistency over the next few weeks, I would imagine.
Yeah, just looking at some of the... sorry, Steve, I was going to say, just looking at some of the comments that are coming in, it is quite a split camp, if you like. There's a few Celtic fans that are commenting. Bobby Sutherland has said 10's probably long gone now, but what an achievement the quadruple treble was. Phillips commented underneath him. You can obviously see that comment. He says, Bobby, keep the faith, bro. There's still a long way to go yet. So some Celtic fans think it's maybe over. Some are still keeping the faith, thinking that it's not over till the fat lady sings, if you like. But Stephen, do you have an opinion on it? Do you think it's over?
From a Celtic point of view, they have to keep believing that they're going to close that gap. They have to just keep... what I would... Like, if I'm Neil Lennon, and you... Obviously, after yesterday, you've got to assume... If you are him, you've got to assume my job's safe till the end of this season. Let's just see out this season. And I would go into that dressing room and just say, right, guys, let's just get everything out on the table. Whatever the issues are that are causing these problems, let's get them opened up. Let's speak about them. And once these things are done, and then obviously in January, if people are sold and they maybe bring some more in to strengthen the squad, once your final squad is in place in January, right, whether the people have left or not, at that point you just say, right, listen, we treat this as a mini season now. Whatever's gone before, scrap it. From now on, we treat this as we're going for every single game. I know that's the mentality anyway, but every game we go to win. And if they win every game or as many games as they can between now and the end of the season, and it's still not good enough, then fair enough. But they can't keep sort of harping back to what's happened pre-Christmas and things like that. Like, those games are gone. Like, there's nothing you can do about that. You just need to sort of say, we need to do as much as we can to at least run Rangers close. And if Rangers slip up and Celtic win, and Rangers slip up again, Celtic win, the gap gets closer and closer. I've said this before, the Rangers players have not been in a situation where things have started going wrong. You know what I mean? Like, when they've been the front runners and things...
Well, you say that, Stephen, but they were 1-0 down on Saturday against Motherwell. They showed ruthlessness and the fight and the character to come back and win that game 3-1. Is that where maybe Celtic have maybe struggled when they went 1-0 down, and maybe Rangers are now showing the character to kick on and win the game quite comfortably 3-1? I
agree with you, yeah. Like, what I was meaning is more like when they're ahead, and if they do lose games and Celtic close the gap, that's when it starts. Because not just in one-off matches. Like, one-off matches, I agree with what you're saying. That on Saturday, when you're watching the results coming in there, and Motherwell are 1-0 up at half-time, then it's 55, 65, it gets to 70 minutes, and you're thinking, oh my God, wait a minute here. Like, selfishly, from my point of view, I'm thinking, if Motherwell win this game 1-0, Celtic will be absolutely buzzing. We're going to get annihilated tomorrow. Like, so Rangers coming back to win that game, for me as a Hearts fan, I'm looking at that going, that's put a wee bit of a dampener on them, because the Celtic players would have been sitting looking at that result, and if it had come back as a positive result for Motherwell, it gives them a massive boost, because it opens up the rest of the season for them. And that's what I'm saying. Like, whether it's Motherwell or whether it's next week or the week after, one negative result from Rangers and Celtic continue to get points and keep tallying them up, the whole mentality in both camps can change. So as much as I would like to say the race is still open, I do think that at 16 points at this stage, even with the games in hand, is pretty much unheard of. It would take a minor miracle to kind of turn that round. But stranger things have happened.
Yeah, exactly. If we move on to the game happening at Easter Road on Saturday, it finished Hibs 1, Dundee United 1. Jack Ross come out in the press. Anthony said he was the angriest he'd ever been as a Hibs manager following the players' 1-1 draw after Dundee United equalised in the 91st minute. Now, my mum is a Hibs supporter, and she came out to me and she said, I am dreading it if Hearts win the Scottish Cup, because Celtic will come for Jack Ross and we'll lose him. Do you think that could have been a possibility? Or is he happy at Hibs because they're doing well apart from losing last-minute goals like they did on Saturday?
He's doing well. I mean, I can understand why he's frustrated on Saturday, because that's the sort of game, if Hibs really want to finish third, they need to be winning. I mean, I didn't see the game, but by all accounts, they had enough chances to have won relatively comfortably. Dundee United keeper seemed to have a fantastic game. And if the crazy thing is, you would never think it. I don't know why this is, but if Hibs had won that game on Saturday, it would have been their best start to a league campaign in the Premiership in 20 years in terms of points accumulated at the 18-game mark. They would have had more points than Tony Mowbray's team in the mid-noughties. They would have more points than Neil Lennon's team 3 years ago, more points than John Hughes' team had at the same stage when they were top of the league at this time of the year. So, I mean, they've been deceptively good this season, Hibs, because I don't know if it's losing the semi-final to Hearts is maybe taking the edge off the perception of Hibs, but I've never, and possibly it's the fact that fans are not allowed in the ground, so you don't get that exhilarating feeling when you watch them. Do you know what I mean? When fans are there and there's a big raucous reaction to a match if they've played well. I know Hibs have been going well, but I never thought of them as being as strong as the results actually have been when you look back at it like that. So, I mean, they've shown real good consistency, but there's still that feeling that it could have been even better if they'd held on and beat Celtic a couple of weeks ago, if they'd beaten Dundee United. I mean, they could have been in second place if they'd just been a wee bit more ruthless at the vital times in games.
Yeah,
that's what you're going to get with teams like Hibs, though. Like that, and I'm not meaning that in a disrespectful way. Like it's exactly what you're saying with Hearts and Aberdeen. Like if Hearts and Aberdeen or Hibs are going to mount a challenge on the Old Firm at any point, you need to have that consistency. You need to have, like, if you look back at the 2006 season when Hearts finished second, like obviously Hearts were a great team at that time, but there was games against the Old Firm and against like Aberdeen where it was maybe 1-0 Hearts or it was 1-1 and then Hearts get a late winner, or so you need those wee bits of luck to go with you. And you're right in what you're saying. Like if Hibs had won this game, or if they'd like consolidated the game against St Johnstone at home, if they'd won that, and but that's why Hibs are in the position that they're in, and like they're comfortably like in that battle with Aberdeen for third and fourth place, and I think that's where they should be, to be perfectly honest. Like where if Jack Ross is going to have a successful season, they will finish third, and if they finish fourth, I don't think that should be seen as a massive failure in Jack Ross's part. I think you've got to look at the kind of his mass body of work and what he's done, and it's great. Like if I was a Hibs fan, I'd be absolutely delighted to hear him coming out and saying something like that. Like he was furious and he's angry with the players, because you hope that translates into the dressing room and he goes in there and just says, "Listen, that's not acceptable for a club at our level. Like we want it, if we're at home against a team like Dundee United in the position that we are at the moment, we just need to go and win these games." So you would hope that the team learns for that mistake and kind of moves forward if you're a Hibs fan. But again, you look at what he did at Sunderland. There was times where it looked like they were going to kick on, and you never know in football. I really like Jack Ross and I really rate him as a manager. I think he's got all the attributes, but I just think he's nowhere near finished the job at Hibs, nowhere near. And for him to either take the step and go to Celtic, or for Celtic to look at him, I just don't think that's the right move for either party at this moment, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. So the game that Stuart Kettlewell got excused from his managerial duties up at Dingwall, it finished Ross County 0, Hamilton Accies 2. Brian Rice has turned the corner. He's a manager a few weeks ago on the podcast we were saying would be on a sugly peg. I mean, what a season this is turning out to be. Everybody seems to be turning corners, Anthony. Goals from Ross Callaghan and Scott Martin secured the Accies win. It should be interesting to see the fight at the battle at the bottom of the table now that Yogi's come in. He's going to inject that adrenaline into the Ross County guys, and that's the kind of games, though, that they should be winning against Hamilton. Did anybody see the press conference that Stuart Kettlewell did after the game?
Yeah.
What did you think, Stephen? I mean, I've got a huge respect for him for doing that.
Massive. Like I think that it's quite good. It's quite good in a way that because he kind of put out any fires and stuff. Like he's obviously been told. I would imagine he'd been told before the game, listen, if we don't get a positive result here, we've got no choice. We're going to have to kind of move you on. And that's how he obviously knew straight after the game, I'm gone here. But for him to go out and just kind of front it up to the press like that, I actually felt a bit sorry for the girl who was interviewing him, because I'm not really too sure you don't get training for stuff like that. But she did a really good job in terms of kind of trying to ask him the right questions and things. But fair play to him. But I read today that he's potentially going to get kept on at the club, and they're going to move him back to his old position as head of youth, which would be great if he's happy to do that. I just think it's a strange situation for the players in that scenario, though, and obviously that would need to get signed off by Yogi as well. But how would the players kind of look at that and say, well, he used to be our boss and now he's just training the kids? Like, I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, so as we touched on earlier, Ross County, they are away to Celtic on Wednesday night, 6 o'clock kickoff. And also Hamilton, they are hosting Livingston as well. Livingston have come out today, and it's probably been the most predictable event in Scottish football of recent years, and given the job full-time to Martindale. Whatever background stories there is around about that club and his position, he deserves that role, Anthony, doesn't he? It's a result-driven industry, and he's proved that he can get results.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always wary of giving somebody a job on the basis of what they do as a caretaker, because I think most caretaker managers tend to get some kind of bounce just because they're a fresh face after the previous guy's gone. So you usually find, I mean, you saw it with Solskjaer. I'm not saying Solskjaer's a good or a bad manager, but he was probably a perfect example of a manager who thrived as caretaker. And then when he actually became the manager, it wasn't quite as good as it looked when he was a caretaker. I think there's loads of instances of that where a caretaker comes in, does brilliant for 3 or 4 games, gets the job, and then the magic wears off pretty quickly. So I don't think it's necessarily a guarantee that Martindale will be a successful manager, but certainly he's been around the club for long enough. He's been gradually he's become more prominent as the years have gone on at Livingston, and if he's now taken the team, sorry, my cat's just jumped on the table here. So now that he's taken the team and he's getting results, he's probably merits a crack at it, and it'll be interesting to see how he goes now that he's out on his own and it's all on him.
Yeah,
they've only given him a contract to the summer, though. Is that right? They've only given him it till the end of the season.
I'm unsure as to the contract.
Yeah, I think I was reading that earlier. So it's maybe a bit clever in Livingston's part as well to sort of say that it's almost like making him the caretaker manager, but for a longer period of time. So I don't know. I just think that it's an absolute no-brainer. I agree with what Anthony said in terms of you don't always. That new manager bounce sometimes comes in the little period where you're the caretaker, and that bounce kind of disappears straight afterwards. But he's been around that club for so long, and he must have the players' respect because he takes training every day. And as we've touched on in the last couple of weeks, look how far the club have come in the last 2 or 3 years, the last 3 or 4 years, and he's been there that entire time. So fair play to the guy, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so the last game in the Premiership that happened at the weekend was St Mirren 3, St Johnstone 2. The St Mirren manager, Jim Goodwin, he's come out and praised his side for the drastic turnaround in their season. They came from behind to beat 10-man St Johnstone at the weekend. Again, another story of we were talking about teams that were struggling at the start of the season and how he's just turned that around. St Mirren look like a force now, I think. I think they look like a good team. Your
Sugarly Peg club, mate, that we talk about every single week. It's some of them are doing pretty well for themselves now. Aye.
That's it. They must watch this show and think I'm going to get one up that baldy.
By the way, I also noticed you never ever mentioned Stuart Kettlewell in the Sugarly Peg club, and he's just lost his job. So
I've tried every other manager, and the next one who's going to be on a Sugarly Peg, I think, is the Kilmarnock manager, Dyer. He seems to be getting a little bit of heat.
They're absolutely free falling, yeah.
Yeah, he come out and he slated his team. I don't know if you've seen the second goal, the free kick. If anybody's not seen that yet, record Scott Sport or Sports Team, whatever it's called, to go back and watch it. That is the worst free kick defending wise of a wall I have ever seen. Literally, they all grouped together. I don't even think the goalkeepers come in command and say where he wants his ball. They're not joined in unity. They all jump, turn their back, they hide, they lift their legs, and Cosgrove just fires it across the deck, right past the keeper. It's embarrassing, and he actually come out and he slaughtered his players for defending that free kick that way.
Here's something. I've got a question for you from a goalie point of view, right?
So here we go.
I watched a couple of Premiership games over the last couple of days, right? And I've noticed that a lot of teams are now putting that guy along the bottom of the wall. Have you seen that? That they got a guy to lie with his back to the wall so that no one can go under the wall when they jump. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you would ever implement?
Not at my level, not by no means. Not at the level that I coach at, but I can see why they would do it because it's predictable that, I mean, if you're going to jump and you're going to get that 2-yard leverage and you can protect the gap underneath the player as well in case he does decide to shoot low, then why not? If you've got that spare man to do so, if he's not picking up or it looks a bit naff. It looks a bit naff, to be fair.
Yeah, it's just something that why have we never, football's been around for hundreds of years. Why has no one ever thought to do this before now? Eh?
It's mental.
It's like that thing where they get a guy to dance about behind the wall to distract the goalkeeper.
Stephen Taylor used to do it for Newcastle years ago. Aye, that was funny.
There was a great comeback that happened in the Championship on Saturday. I don't know if you've seen this. Dundee were 3-0 up. Dunfermline pulled it back to finish 3-all.
That's twice Dunfermline have done that now, because they did that against Wraith as well, when Wraith were 2-0 up on them quite reasonably late on, and they came back to 2-2 again. So it's only positive for Crawford, because he, obviously it's not great being 3-0 down in a game or 2-0 down to Wraith Rovers, but to have that sort of fight to come back, it's you can only look at that as a positive. But from a Hearts point of view, that was a great result for us, because no one's gaining any sort of ground on us. Again, James McPake, mate, Sugarly Peg, is he going to be he's in the Sugarly Peg club, eh?
He was. Again, on reflection, I recall maybe 3 weeks ago on the show we were saying how Inverness, Cali and Dunfermline were the teams that were going to push for Hearts. They seem to be on a bit of free fall as well. They go beat 2-1 away to Alloa at the weekend. I take it as Robo's team just out there.
It's all coming together for Hearts now. I mean, it was only, I think, 3 weeks ago we were here, Hearts had just lost to Alloa, and it was all doom and gloom for Hearts, and the players were getting called out for being, I don't know, whatever people were calling them at the time, but it certainly wasn't complimentary. And now, 3 weeks down the line, everybody's proud of the team again. They're 3 points clear at the top of the league with games in hand. All their rivals are floundering. Dunfermline, fair enough, they had a great comeback, but they're ultimately, as you say, they were 3-0 down at Dundee, and they're 3 points adrift to Hearts. It feels like now there's a real opportunity for Hearts to surge clear and get this league tied up with a bit to spare. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen, but certainly it's opening up now, and Hearts are starting to motor a little bit. They're showing good consistency, particularly in the league, and I can't really see any reason for things to go wrong. The team's functioning pretty well. They're scoring goals. They're generally looking pretty decent defensively. The midfield's still not quite right, because they're changing the midfield combo almost every game. Ideally, I would like to see them play with Haring and Lee as the two, but I can see the appeal of putting Irvin in there because he can pass the ball really well. Yep. I think Haring and Lee is a partnership that has done well for Hearts previously, and I know Lee likes to play further forward, but I think Hearts can almost afford to play with a front five with Haring anchoring and just let Lee almost go and join the attackers. But Lee can also drop back and help Haring. If they can just get that midfield sorted, I think they'll become a real well-oiled machine, because the attack's starting to come together and the defence is pretty settled in terms of Smith, Berra, Halkett and Kingsley with Gordon behind them. So they're getting a real relative continuity with Ginnelly back. I can only see Hearts motoring and pulling away from the rest here. I'd be very surprised if they start to make the weather of it now. Yeah,
like I said, it finished Alloa 2, Inverness Cali 1. Other games in the Championship was Arbroath 2, Ayr United 1. We touched on Dundee 3, Dunfermline 3. And Green at Morton, they got a home win, 2-0 against Queen of the South. Now, I'm quite conscious of the time. We better start wrapping things up. But there's a couple of games happening tonight. We could talk about this subject for a good hour. Wick Academy in round 1 of the Scottish Cup are hosting Musselburgh Athletic, an East of Scotland team. All players that are not full-time, part-time players that would all have had jobs today, having to travel from Musselburgh all the way up to Wick for a 7:30 kick-off. So that'll be kicking off in the next couple of minutes. I want to wish Musselburgh all the best, the local team, as to where we are. The winner of that will face Cowdenbeath on Boxing Day at Cowdenbeath, so it might save the Wick players a trip down to Cowdenbeath. That's just mental, guys, isn't it?
It's crazy, but at the end of the day, that we spoke about this when we spoke about your team the other week, that these guys may never get a chance to kind of go this far in the Scottish Cup and achieve anything. So, it's all part of the experience, going up and getting on a away day and going to places like this. I mean, it's no ideal, as you say, a Monday night all the way up there. You would hope that the majority of those players have had the day off their work and they've been able to kind of get up there at a decent time and kind of get things organised. But it's crazy asking teams to do that. But listen, the schedule for this year's Scottish Cup is going to be, as you touched on a couple of weeks ago, Sammy, it's going to be so tight and so concertina that they have to fit games in when they can. So, but yeah, big shout to my mate David Livy as well, who is going to be playing Stenhousemuir on the Boxing Day as well. So good luck to Livy. Hope you don't concede 10, mate.
Absolutely. Preston Athletic. They faced Stenhousemuir on Boxing Day. Livy contributes to the show quite a bit. He comments on the show. Thanks to John Cockrell as well for his comment. He's mentioned a couple of things on tonight's show. I'm not going to read them out though, John. Keep it clean. Like you say, my team Haddington Athletic, we're going to face the winners of Martin United and Turriff United, who are playing tonight, so that should be good to see who we face on Boxing Day as well. Other games coming up on Wednesday, Celtic, like I say, host Ross County, Hamilton Accies Livingston, Hibs are at home against St Mirren, while St Johnstone hosts Rangers, Motherwell are at Fir Park against Aberdeen, and it's Dundee United versus Kilmarnock. It's going to be a good festive period, I think. I think this is probably going to be our last play-on podcast of 2020. Going into 2021, I don't think we're going to be back in the studios probably for much of January, so we'll probably have to adopt this remote session. But I just want to thank everybody who's taken even a minute out of their day to watch the Play On podcast. Thanks for all the views. Thanks for everybody that's watched. Thanks for everybody that's contributed with the comments. I'm sure I'll speak on behalf of Stephen Commons and Anthony Brown and say hope you all have a Merry Christmas and all the best for 2021, and we'll catch up with you all then. Thanks very much.